Grey's Anatomy was one of the shows that I was always going to do on this channel. Like, I knew that from the moment I decided to do this. There are just some shows that stick with me, and I find myself rewatching them like every year, like clockwork. And Grey's Anatomy is on that list. Avatar: The Last Airbender is on that list. And The Fosters I'd also put on there. And it's like the stories never really, I can never get over those stories, but more importantly, the characters just like, I don't know, I connected with those characters and they have just stuck with me for years, like literally since I was a kid. So I was always going to talk about Grey's Anatomy. That was a given. But now, unfortunately for me, Grey's Anatomy is about to begin season 22, which is way too many seasons. And the idea of trying to do a breakdown, like season by season breakdown, like I did for, I started doing for the Fosters, and like I started with Avatar, which I'm gonna, that was such a long time ago. Season 2 is coming, I promise. Anyway, the idea of doing that breakdown for Grey's Anatomy is just impossible to even think about, because even though like season 1 is fairly short, in the back of my mind, I know that eventually there's season 21 to get to, and I just like cannot wrap my head around that. But even more to the point, I don't want to, because the quality is just not good. Like I it's just not good. Everything, okay. I think there's like a general understanding among fans that there's like a split in the show. There's like the good half and the bad half. Now, where you decide to put that split now, like, depends on people, obviously. For me, it's literally like the halfway point. Like season 10 is where I think is the last season I would call like good. And I'm not even really sure I would put it in the same, because I think for me, like season 6, 7, 8, and 9 are like peak Grey's Anatomy. I think that's when they had the best characters and relationships and storylines and drama, and like everything was just peak during those seasons. Then I think like season 10, I just put it in there because I don't have anything against it. I just genuinely actually don't remember what even goes on in there, but it's I think it's good. I think it's okay. But for me, like from there, everything starts going downhill. And it has a lot to do with characters leaving, like very important characters leaving, character deaths, and additional characters come in that are just like, who cares? But anyway, I'm getting off track. The point is that I don't want to talk about anything that goes beyond season 10. So now I had this dilemma where it's like, I want to talk about it because this is such a like important show in my life, but I also don't want to go into too much detail about each season individually. It's like, what do I do? And basically I realized I was like overcomplicating it, and that it doesn't need to be so structured. This is a journey of relaxing, you know what I mean? Like I think I start off giving myself like so many limitations, so many like I have to have strict categories and like a scientific approach to everything, and it's like, no, you can also just talk about things, you know? Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is just talk about the things that I think are the best things they did in Grey's Anatomy, and the things that I think are the worst. And because it's such a long running show, there's obviously a lot to talk about in terms of good and bad. So it's gonna be, I think, a series. It's gonna end up being like part 1 of the best things, part 2, etc., etc. Yeah, so this is part 1 of the worst things that I think they did in Grey's Anatomy. Let's talk about it. Dun, da, 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 dun, da, da, dun, dun, da, da, da. Da, 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 dun, da, 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 da. Da, 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 dun, dun, da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Izzy and George, they went from the perfect like friendship, cute little friendship, to the most uncomfortable and disgusting relationship, to just basically forgotten. And it's honestly so sad what they did to these two, because I really liked them. I like, as friends, I think they had a really cute relationship. Like I said, they had really nice platonic chemistry. And I've always kind of thought that they served as a nice, like, alternative friendship to the, like, Meredith Christina dark and twisty, sort of relationship that they had, that was very intense and very, like, closed off. I think Izzy said a couple of times that Meredith and Christina, it's like they were in their own club, and nobody else was allowed in and whatever, and they were very closed off. And so I think Izzy and George had the kind of flip side of that was more like sunshine and rainbows, and they had a good time together. They laughed, they made each other happy, they just enjoyed each other's company, sort of thing. And I really liked it. It's like a more, I almost want to say, like, normal friendship as compared to the Twisted Sisters, and I think that that's what the writers must have just misinterpreted as, because I'm sure many people did like their friendship, and so now it's like, people like this, like, oh, let's take it a step further. No. So they just now went ahead and ruined the entire thing with the most unnecessary, uncomfortable, I'm going to say the word uncomfortable so many times, but that's just what it is. I don't know how else to put it. The thing about it that is so annoying is that neither of them had ever expressed any sort of interest in getting into a relationship. Neither of them there weren't any scenes of, like, them looking at each other longingly, or anybody saying something that might suggest that there was deeper feeling somewhere. It literally came out of left field, out of nowhere, because all of a sudden, like, Callie mentions to George that Izzy's in love with him. And the insane thing about it is that when she says this, George bursts out laughing, okay, just to drive home the absolute absurdity of such an idea. And when he goes and tells Izzy, she also starts laughing, because it's just so dumb. But it's like, oh no, because she's now planted this seed, it's true. No, that's not how it works. In fact, Callie at this stage was very insecure, particularly about Izzy, but about all of it, like, because come to think of it, like, George is her husband, but even from the beginning, when they were just dating, she was always really intimidated by the fact that his best friends were 3 girls, and, like, very attractive girls, and if you want to look at the hospital in terms of, like, high school hierarchy, which they bring up a couple times in the show, is like sometimes the hospital does behave that way. It's like the 3 of them would basically be like the it girls, which is insane to think about, because they were interns, and Callie herself was like a resident. She was above them. She was in Bailey's class, so it's like she's much higher than them hierarchy-wise in terms of the hospital, but she was always so intimidated by them. Understandably, because she's like a weird, kind of quirky. She's not, these other ones, like, Izzy was a model, and Meredith and Christina are like stick figures, you know what I mean? So she was always feeling like she's not as beautiful and all of that kind of stuff. Like, she can't compete with them for George's attention. She was always begging him to choose her and put her first for once. And so it makes sense for her character to say that Izzy is in love with him. And if they just framed it from that perspective and created a bunch of drama around, because Izzy is constantly trying to get George to understand that he's made a mistake in marrying Callie, and she, from her perspective, she's just being a good friend, because he's made this huge decision off the wings of his dad dying. He's been devastated, and then he makes this huge life decision. Everybody was concerned about this, even Bailey. So she's just trying to be a good friend, but it's irritating him that she's not supporting his marriage. And then you have Callie on the other side of it, who is like telling him it's because she's in love with you, and can you just pick my side for once, be on my side? And so it causes a lot of drama and tension in that sort of way. brilliant, fine, absolutely makes sense. Everybody's characters are acting the way they should, believably, and it's just basically miscommunication on all sides that is causing all of this like uproar. That would have been perfectly understandable. But instead, despite the fact that they actually have the characters laugh when this idea is floated to them, they then go ahead with it. Like, I don't understand why they thought this would be a good idea. And the most annoying part for me, let me not say most annoying because we've got a lot to go, but an additional annoying feature of this entire storyline is that the writers don't see it through. So they don't even have them, like, he cheats on Callie and then gets with Izzy and then it's awkward and they can't figure out what they're doing and how to be intimate and whatever. Like, it was uncomfortable as hell to watch. They go through all of that and then it's just gone. Like, they don't give it a proper ending. They don't have them have any sort of discussion. Like, there is one where they kind of just say, like, they've been trying for so long to make the relationship, not even relationship, like the physical part of the relationship work, and it's making them like awkward around each other. And they have a conversation once about how they just like miss their best friend, and that's sort of it. And then it just kind of dies. Both of their relationship just dies into the background. It's like they don't hang out with each other anymore. They don't have scenes together. George himself is just relegated to the background. Like, he doesn't show up a lot in episodes anymore. We don't really know what's going on with him. It just kind of pops in and out, and it's mostly with Lexi and stuff. Personally, I would have had it be something like, the relationship can't work. Let's say, like George says, the relationship can't work because you've committed at this point. You've already done it. So just like see it through. So they try for episodes to be intimate. It's not working. And finally George says that like he can't do it because his feelings are associated with how he broke Callie's heart, how he, cheated on her, and he's so guilty about it, and disappointing his mother. Like, never ever forget how upset his mother was when she found out what he was doing. But so just have it be the explanation as for why the relationship doesn't work out and why they're not together. It's kind of similar to the relationship in Friends with when they tried to make Joey and Rachel a thing for a while. It's honestly basically the same thing. But even in Friends, they had the decency to make them have an actual conversation when they realize like fans don't like this or whatever it is. They realize like they don't want to actually go through with it. They actually made the characters have a conversation about this is not going to happen, so that when it is nowhere to be seen in following episodes, we understand, we know why. But this one, it's like, honestly, it's like disrespecting us as viewers because you made a mistake and now you're not even gonna properly fix it. You're just gonna like sweep it under the rug and try and hope that we forget. And the worst thing is that it works. Like, you don't even think about the fact that George isn't around as much, or I don't know, that Izzy and George are not dating, because that is what they're supposed to be doing at this point. It's a couple of episodes where they're like, oh, we don't want to like rub it in Kylie's face or whatever, but they are supposed to be dating. And the fact that we don't see it, the fact that we don't think about it, and we don't realize that it's not actually happening is insane, because these are two of our four main characters. So imagine if like Meredith and Christina got into a relationship, you know what I mean? Or like they were trying to start up some kind of romance. And nobody would ever forget that. But now it's like we do, and it's just because of how much we just reject the entire idea. But here's the thing. Why is it the worst thing? Because as I said, there's good, there's the best stuff, there's stuff that just kind of happens, you don't really have an opinion about it one way or the other. There's bad stuff, but I'm talking about the worst things, like the truly worst things they ever did, not just stuff that I don't like. So why? And I'll tell you. It's because Izzy gets cancer and George dies. Now, it would have been one thing if the story just kind of continued with these characters now no longer friends. It would have been sad because I did like their friendship. I still would have been irritated because the whole thing was uncomfortable to watch, but it wouldn't be like an egregious crime, you know? But it is precisely because of the way the story goes moving forward. And so Izzy spends several episodes hallucinating, and she's hallucinating her dead fiance, who, like, it was Denny. So first of all, we were all just like heartbroken, but also like, can you actually just imagine having such vivid, like, he's there in the room with you, you can touch him and everything, but he's dead. Like, it was crazy. But anyway, so this is what is going on with her for several episodes, and nobody notices, not even Alex, who she is dating. And the one person who does kind of pick up on the fact that something is going on with her is George. But instead of like confronting her about it or talking to her or trying to figure out what is going on, he just kind of mentions it to Alex and is like, he's not gonna get involved because they tried to tell us that it's because Alex and Izzy are dating and he doesn't want to get involved or whatever. He doesn't want to like step on his toes or something. And I'm like, please, George literally has never cared about Alex. There is no way you can convince me that he would just step back from Izzy when he can clearly see something is going on just because he wants to respect Alex's position as her boyfriend. No, it's nonsense. So the only reason that this happens is because of this stupid romance that they had that now ruined the entire friendship. Now they're not talking to each other, and it's like irreversible. I don't understand why the writers felt like they couldn't get back to being friends after this, but they do. And so therefore he's just not involved in that entire thing. And then when Izzy herself finds out that she has cancer, she finally figures it out, she tells Christina, and then George gets mad because she didn't tell him, and that just further drives a wedge between them, because despite the fact that he just found out she has cancer, a bad cancer, and is dying, he's still not there for her. He doesn't like show up for her the way that we all know he actually would. He actually just continues to avoid her. And it's so annoying that they destroyed their friendship in this way, because there's so many other ways that you could do this. So like, I do understand one thing about this. There's a scene where it's actually a pretty sad scene. It always makes me feel really bad for Izzy. In the episode when Derek has moved in with Meredith, and so he's trying to get her to kick the roommates out, and Izzy is like really worried that she's not gonna have a place to stay, and Meredith hasn't made up her mind yet, so Izzy doesn't really know what's going on, and so she's trying to find another place to stay and a roommate. And she side note, Christina is honestly the best character in the world. She's the MVP, because Izzy goes to get, like, she finds this place that is really nice, but it's out of her price range. So she goes to Christina and is like, she shows her the place and is like, please just think it over. I found this really nice place. I can't afford it though. So please just think about it. Christina is like, yeah, of course. And then Christina loves the place, goes to Callie, asks her to be her roommate, and the two of them like put a deposit down to rent the place. And so when Izzy comes back later, she's like, did you think about it? She's like, yeah. Christina is like, yeah, that was amazing. That was like, thank you so much. So Izzy's like, great. So are we gonna get it? She's like, yeah, I already paid the deposit. And Izzy's like, what? What do you mean? I was asking you to move in with me. And Christina just laughs. Like, it's the funniest thing to her that Izzy would think they would be roommates. And she doesn't even feel bad. Like, she's the best, because she's fully aware of the fact that Izzy is worried that she's not going to have a place to stay. Christina knows everything that is going on with Meredith and Derek and the roommates not knowing if they're going to be allowed to stay or not. She knows. So it's so insane that it doesn't cross her mind that Izzy is, one, asking her to move in with her, or two, that she doesn't even like think like maybe I should offer Izzy that we move into this place together. Like, it's just, she's the best. She's honestly the best. So that whole thing, the whole episode kind of gets Izzy to this place where at the end she's sitting by herself outside Meredith's house, and she tells Meredith, like, I don't know how it happened, something like this, I don't know how it happened, but I'm all alone. And it's so sad when she says that. I always feel so bad for her, because it's true. She just kind of comes to the realization that she doesn't have anybody in her life that she can rely on, somebody that has her back, because that was George, you know? And so now she is alone. And it's particularly sad for a character like hers, who is like everybody's friend. She's a people person. She's happy. She's bubbly, sunshine. You know, everybody loves her. But it's like, everybody loves her, but somehow she still doesn't have someone. And it kind of gets Meredith. So I like this storyline for both of them, for Izzy and also for Meredith, because it also gets Meredith to kind of be like, no, you're not, like, we're a family. And she goes and tells Derek that she's not kicking her roommates out and whatever. And it serves a really good narrative purpose to have that moment, that low moment for Izzy, because it develops both of them. It develops Meredith as well. So I do like that. And I also like the storyline of Izzy just hallucinating Danny for a couple of episodes. I also really enjoy that. And I think that is also like very compelling stuff to watch, because we're also wondering like, what the hell is going on, right? So I understand that for both of those things to happen, Izzy cannot have George in her life, because as I said, like, George would just, he already knows something is wrong. If they were still on best friend level, like, she would probably have just told him much, much sooner that she was hallucinating Danny. And he would have probably like gotten her to get tested and whatever. Like, the whole thing would have been solved much sooner. I understand that he cannot be around. But you could have still had this moment without completely wasting our time as viewers, because the story, like, honestly, the handling of that entire situation was just, it felt rude, you know? I think I've said this already. I felt disrespected as a viewer, because you're trying to gaslight me into forgetting that these two even know each other, you know, like, as if they were not best friends. Now you just have them faded, like, George faded into the background, but without any actual proper conclusion to the story. And it annoys the hell out of me, because you could have done it, like, now you've, as I said, you've already committed to this, they've cheated. So you could have just had it be like, they cheat on that one night, it happens, they were drunk, they're really close friends, Izzy's beautiful, it happens. And then now they avoid each other because it's awkward. George is feeling really guilty. Izzy doesn't know how to tell George she doesn't want to be in a relationship with him. It was a mistake, everybody knows it, they don't want to talk about it. Maybe other characters are like, what is going on with you guys, for a couple of episodes. And then finally Callie finds out, it all comes out, and, you know, now we're in the same place where they're not talking to each other, they're avoiding each other and whatever. We still get there, but you've respected me enough to actually like conclude the story, you know what I mean? The way they handle it is just egregious. It's honestly horrible. And then when George dies, Izzy now is left, the way she reacts is not okay. So there's the fact that she laughs at the funeral, which is like, you know, it's not great, but at the same time, I understand that people have different reactions to grief, you know, sometimes it's inappropriate. And that's fine. I don't even have a big issue with that scene itself. For me, it's like, moving forward, it doesn't affect her as much as it should. For example, Callie. We watch Callie go through grief when it comes to George's death. Like, she is sad. We see it. And we don't get that with Izzy. And she is like, yes, she's going through cancer and all that stuff, but like, I think they even mentioned at some point that Alex maybe says it, that she cannot take this news of George's death right now because she's fighting for her life, you know? So it's like implying that this news is going to just destroy her. Like, she's going to be so devastated. And she's just not. And I hate that. I hate the fact that they, even after all of this time, they don't give the proper like weight to the relationship that they had. It's just kind of like, Callie, for heaven's sake, divorced the guy. He cheated on her. She was like way past it. At this point, she was like, she'd already come out. She was bi. She was dating Arizona, and yet this wrecks her. And I'm like, his best friend. You really want me to believe that his best friend would not react in a similar way? Izzy, who feels things, like, surely you've got to be kidding. Like, it just like piled on to the already horrible treatment that these people had gotten, and the way he had behaved with her getting cancer and everything was already so frustrating. Then it's like, now on the flip side, she's also not behaving like she would. I don't know, the entire thing was just bungled from top to bottom, and it was like, the whole thing annoying, unforgivable, and that is why it just had to be on this list of the worst things, because it's not just that it was uncomfortable to watch. It's not just that like I didn't like them as a couple. It's that it had bigger implications for their characters, for the story moving forward. Like, it affected so much, and it's honestly one of the worst things. Owen Hunt. I actually think that at some point on one of my rewatches, I'm gonna try and keep track of when exactly he starts to become so detestable. Because the Owen Hunt who shows up, his first appearance, when he like saves Christina from the icicle that has impaled her, and he just kisses her, basically like sweeps her off her feet and whatever. Like, that guy seems like a very interesting character. He seems like somebody that I would like. And then the character who then shows up later, that now is our like main, the guy, this version of Owen is who we get stuck with for the rest of the season, the rest of the entirety of the show really, is this traumatized soldier, because when he went back on tour after meeting Christina the first time, something happened that gave him PTSD. And even this version of him, I like that trauma that he has that makes him mysterious and kind of dangerous, and like all of that drama that ends up unfolding because of his PTSD, I really do enjoy. And so I'm curious, like, at what point does it go from that to me wishing him dead, like in every episode, just hoping something happens to him and he dies? The thing is that I think he shows up and he's traumatized, and I know that it's not really something that can be resolved in even one season. Like, the kind of trauma and PTSD that he has, you can't just like resolve that in one season. I think that would have been a bit unrealistic. So honestly, what I think they should have done is just had him be on the show for a couple of seasons. Him and Christina go through all the drama that they already go through in the show, and then he leaves after a while. Like, I think he wasn't a character that was meant to stay as long as he has. Something should have, like, maybe, honestly, if you think about it, the ending with the shooting where the hospital gets under attack and there's a shooter who just kills a bunch of people, that should have been really triggering for him. And I think that at that point he should have left after that, and it'd be just like he's gone to like figure out how he's going to get better, or he needs a less stressful environment, or whatever it is, and so his character leaves the show. Because I think there are characters who come in and out of shows to just kind of develop our main characters in some sort of way. Like Erica Han, who basically her entire purpose is just for Kallie's like bi-awakening, and once that's complete, it's like she leaves, because obviously Erica Han is not who Callie is going to end up with, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think Owen should have served a similar purpose with Christina. Now, I don't know in what ways he would have been developing her character, but I think it was just interesting as it was, just watching her have to deal with this insane relationship and pretty heavy like stuff going on, like him choking her in his sleep and stuff. That's intense stuff. And it was interesting. And I think Owen would have been a much more like favorable character if he had just served his purpose and left. We would have been able to like look back on him and just be like, I liked that character, you know. As it is, like everything that happens with him and Amelia. Now, this is the other thing. We're getting now into territory of the seasons that I haven't really watched as often. So you'll have to forgive me if my memory is not exactly correct. But him and Amelia was not interesting. That much I remember. I personally did not find that entire storyline interesting at all. I don't think they had a good relationship. And then him and Teddy, boy, don't even get me started. Those two are the most frustrating elements of this show. Frankly, maybe I should add, because it's not on this list, but I think I'm going to add it here as like an honorary mention, or maybe I'll put it in part 2. Teddy and Owen is one of the worst things they ever did on Grey's Anatomy, because it drags on so unnecessarily long. Season 21, we are still dealing with their relationship drama. For heaven's sake. Like, there's no reason why we should be watching them rehash the same problems over and over again. These people are too old for this kind of nonsense. You know what I mean? Anyway, him and Teddy, just, again, it's horrible. And then the thing is, I like Teddy. I like her like as a character. I think she's complicated, you know? I think she's like, she has layers. She's interesting. She's an interesting character when she's on her own. And I like Amelia. And obviously, like, I love Christina. As I said, Christina is the MVP. So really, the only thing left to admit is that Owen is the problem. He's like the common issue with each of these relationships, you know? And I know it's kind of like a fandom joke that like, oh, you know, we hate Owen, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny, but I just genuinely do hate him. It's not even about like, he's annoying. He's just as a character, he's unlikable. But I don't wish he never existed, because as I said, I do like the beginning where it was his PTSD and he felt like a character who was making things happen. You know, he was bringing something to the show. He was affecting other characters in some way, and that is always better, even if the character is not somebody that you like. It's like the way you have like a villain who you love to hate, you know, like the villain is serving a purpose. And that's how I feel about the early days Owen. It's like, I don't like him as a person, but I do recognize what he's bringing to the show, and so I think it was good for him to be there. The thing is that I think he overstayed his welcome. I think that he just needed to leave once he was done with Christina. Once that whole relationship with Christina came to its natural conclusion, he should have left the show. Or even before. It could have been a not so natural conclusion where he just kind of leaves her. It would have been very sad for Christina, especially because Burke did the same thing. But like, it would have been better than having him now where it's like, see, this is the thing. I think his character had a lot of potential. I like the way he doesn't interact so well with other people. So when he comes in, he has a lot of friction with like Derek and Mark, and he has this kind of vibe to him that's kind of similar to Bailey's, where it's like, I'm not really here to mingle, I'm not here to make friends, I don't want to hear about your personal life, like I just want to work sort of attitude. And so he has this like awkwardness around him when people start getting personal, and I like that. But the problem with that is it's not good for a long-term character. So Bailey has this She tries as much as possible to stay out of people's business, but she can't. That's the thing. She's always in people's business because she's Bailey and she knows everything. So she says all the time that she doesn't care, she doesn't want to know, but she does. And that's the thing that like keeps her entertaining, is that she's not actually removed from everything. But Owen is, like, he doesn't have any personal connections with people. He doesn't matter in other people's lives, you know what I mean? Nobody's going to him for like advice or comfort or whatever. It's just, he just is existing. Like, who is his best friend? Who are his friends in general? You know, like nobody. He doesn't have any relationships aside from the romantic one, and the romantic one is always annoying and full of nonsensical drama that is pointless and childish and repetitive, because we watch him do it with literally every single woman he is with. But outside of that, like, who is he as a person? What does he enjoy doing? What are his, like, career-wise? He was like chief, but it's like once he wasn't chief anymore, he just kind of, his career ambitions were non-existent. We don't see him having any particular passion for patients, or like, I can't even remember the last time I watched him in surgery with a patient that I care about, that he cares about. You know, that is like one of the foundations of Grey's Anatomy. It's like the patients play as much a role in the doctors' lives as the rest of the drama that's going on. The patients also matter, and that's like how they tell a lot of the stories, is through the patients. When was the last time Owen had that kind of a story? You know, sometimes they bring in like maybe a vet or something and he'll feel passionate about it, but it's like they don't really do a lot of work to make us connect with him in that way that they do with the others. I don't know. He just fails on so many fronts, is basically what I'm trying to say. And he doesn't feel like a person, doesn't feel like a character the way that the others do. If you ask yourself, like, what is he doing right now? Nothing. He's contributing nothing. He's just a parent and a husband, and those are not character traits. Everybody else has children. Everybody else has their romantic partners, but they have other stuff going on in their lives. They have cases and they have like goals they're trying to solve. And if you want to tell me that like his goal, his happily ever after, was just to get married and to have kids, which he has achieved, that's also fine. Then it just proves my point that he's overstayed his welcome and he should be done. He should leave the bloody show. As I said, they cannot think of anything else to do with him except have him in relationship drama. And it's boring, it's tiring, it's frustrating, because it brings down Teddy. I like Teddy. She, as I said, I think she's complicated. You know, they had that whole storyline with her cheating with her best friend, and then the best friend died in 9/11, and then she named her daughter after that best friend that she was like still in love with. It's like, she's a bit, like, Teddy is a complex character, and I think that we don't get to see as much of that because she's tied to Owen, and her storyline therefore is just always relationship stuff with him, and it's the most boring things that you can think of, like, doing with her, you know. And so that there's that. He pulls down Teddy, but then at the same time, just the fact that he is still a character means he has to have screen time, and every second we spend on him is a second we don't get with someone else. Like, I think right now, one of the characters who needs just a little bit more screen time is Amelia. Because I think Amelia is a great character. I really like her, but I think she doesn't have much to do, or like, they're not giving her as much of a storyline as they could. And I'm like, it's because you're wasting time trying to show us things going on with Owen. Nobody cares about Owen and the fact that his wife doesn't love him anymore, or that his kids are sick. Like I said, like, being a father is not a character trait, and it's the only thing about him. So it's like, you don't need to keep showing me every single day that he brings his kid. Like, it's just so annoying, and like, it takes away from other characters getting the time they need to actually develop and fully flesh out like their storylines, because we have to focus on Owen. And so because of all of that, like, he's not on this list because I don't like Owen as a person, because I think he's unlikable. Like, I'm gonna keep saying this, I guess, during the entire video. These things are not just things that I don't like. It's things that I actually think are actively like bringing down the quality of the show. And I think Owen still being a character brings down the quality of the show immensely. I think he's one of the weakest points of the show, and it's like he's a black hole that just sucks. If any character has a storyline that involves Owen, it just gets worse, because Owen as a character brings nothing. He's not interesting. He doesn't drive the plot in any way. He just kind of takes up space and like makes everything boring, because it has no stakes, it has no like build up, no drama, no anything. So it's just like, yeah, Owen Hunt, one of the worst things they ever did. Arizona cheating on Callie will forever be one of the most unforgivable things I've ever watched in Grey's Anatomy. Look, for a long time I didn't really like Arizona. But over the years, like, the more I rewatched it, the more I came to sort of appreciate her character on her own. Like, not just as Callie's girlfriend who cheated on her or like any of that kind of stuff, but just Arizona as a person. I started being able to separate the two, and I don't mind her so much anymore. I actually kind of like her, honestly. But even when I didn't really like Arizona, I always loved Arizona and Callie together. Like, when they were happy, they were so happy and they were so cute, and I was just so happy. Like, I think you have to understand how much I love Callie. Callie is like, she's such a sweetheart. She's like, honestly, one of my favorite characters. It's like Callie and Christina are like up there with each other, honestly. And so I want to get out of the way first that I'm not putting this on the list just because I love Callie so much and therefore hated the fact that she was put through this, because that's really not it. It was sad and it was painful, as I said, but it's like both actors were just, the actresses were amazing. They brought it to life. Like, that pain, you felt it. We got that amazing scene when they were fighting and Arizona is like, you were on the freaking plane. Like, oof. That entire scene was a masterclass in acting. They both killed it. And then we also got like the whole therapy journey with them, and that was also brutal when like Callie realizes she doesn't want to be in the relationship anymore just after Arizona like says how she loves Callie and she knows she wants to be with her. Like, it was just horrible but good, you know? Like, they did a good job with it. It's not the same as with like the Izzy and George thing where they handled it badly. Like, they did it well. It's just that I hate the fact that they did it, because moving forward, how am I supposed to like root for them as a couple? You know, cheating is a hard stop for me. It's always inexcusable unless there was some kind of drugs involved, or, you know, like, there really needs to be extenuating circumstances around it in order for me to feel like it can be redeemed. And so when you tell me that like Arizona is Callie's happy ending, I'm like, no, I can't get on board with it. And I want to. That's the frustrating thing, because I really did love them together. And I thought that they were like perfect together. They were so happy. And I said, like, such fun to watch when they were in a good place. And so I want to think that like once we find out later on that like Callie has broken up with Perfect Penny and Arizona moves out to where Callie is with Sophia, I want to be part of the group that is like, they got back together, like headcanon, they got back together. But I can't, because Arizona cheated on Callie and it was for no reason. That is the other like frustrating thing. It wasn't what was it was a random woman who showed up, who I just always remember as like Peyton from One Tree Hill, and she just showed up out of nowhere in one episode, and Arizona liked her because she didn't like see her as like the woman who lost her leg, or like what was the reason? I don't even remember. But it's like it was so out of nowhere, especially given the fact that it wasn't like in that period where she was still like super pissed off at Callie for cutting off her leg and feeling betrayed. It wasn't like during that period where she was depressed and like unable to like move on with just day-to-day life, and then she meets this woman who like maybe makes her feel like it's a refreshing whatever because it's not tied up in all those feelings with Callie, where it's like she feels like Callie has to take care of her and all that stuff. Like if it was during that period, then it would have at least made a little bit more sense. But it was way past that. They were in a much better place. They were fine. Callie hyped her up all the time. Like she was always talking about how hot her wife is and like all of this stuff. Like everything was fine. So the fact that she then just cheated with this random woman never makes any sense to me. No matter how many times I watch it, I never understand why she does this. And so it makes it so difficult for me to buy back into that fantasy. And it was such a beautiful fantasy. And so it just pisses me off that that's what they did to this couple. Because it's like, fine, even if you want to like have them be broken up so that they can go through all that drama, it's fine. Like I said, like the drama was amazing. And it's only because they were not together that we then got the following stuff with like, so the custody battle for Sophia, which again was just insane drama. But so it's like these things that followed were very interesting. And so that's what I'm saying. Like I understand why they wanted to have this, but breaking them up because Arizona cheated just feels so cheap. It's like they just wanted to go with the quickest, easiest way to break up a perfect relationship. And they wanted to get to this point where they kind of realized, like, where Kylie realizes she doesn't want to be in this relationship anymore. Wouldn't it have just been so much more interesting if it had happened in another way? Like if Kylie went through that whole thing, being there for Arizona, like supporting her through her recovery and all of that stuff, and then slowly just realizing like she doesn't want to be in this relationship anymore, just as Arizona is getting to the like getting out of that depression, out of that like place of anger and resentment, to be like, actually I really do love you, Callie. And then on the flip side, Kylie's getting into like, I mean I love you, but like I don't want to be with you anymore because this whole thing has changed me and I'm not the person I used to be, and I want to go back to that person who was free and happy and light, you know. And that would have just been so much better, because then they separate, they go through all this drama, and then now later, years later, you tell me that they got back together, like they still love each other and they got back together. I would believe that, because it just means that like Kylie needed to take that time for herself as well. She went through this, as much as she wasn't on the plane, you know, like she did lose Mark, and Mark was her best friend. This is what I'm talking about, guys. When I'm telling you best friends in Grey's Anatomy are not a joke, it's not a light thing. So like she lost her best friend on that plane. She basically lost her wife for several months. She had to go through that whole entire trauma of being responsible for like making the decision to cut off her wife's leg to save her life, knowing full well that like she's gonna hate her for it. And then the fallout of all of that, taking care of somebody who is depressed and recovering from like a huge surgery like that, it's not easy, it's difficult. And she was still working at the same time. And then she was also like operating on Derek's hand, and she like basically was holding his entire career in her hands. Like she went through a lot as well. And so it also makes sense to explore that side of it, where it's like she didn't really have the chance to delve into her own emotions and like mental state, because she needed to be there for Arizona, and like Arizona was like going through a lot more. But once that kind of resolves itself and Arizona is okay, it now starts affecting Callie, where it's like she is also actually not okay either. And So she needed to take some time on her own to get herself back, you know, and to just like be Callie again. And once she did that, she moved off with the girl and whatever, and they broke up. And then now both Callie and Arizona are in better places. They're both back to who they are. They're both happy. And they were good together. That is the point. Like, they were so good together. And so, like, once they're now both healed and mentally stable, like, it would be the perfect ending to have them get back together. That would be brilliant. And I could be on the train because there would be no taint on the relationship by some random cheating that is, like, cheap and unexplained and just dumb. Bailey's heart attack. Now, I have to start off by saying that I first of all just don't enjoy the new version of Bailey. She's okay. Like, she's one of the few original cast members remaining. She's one of, you know, like, fan favorite characters, and so that's not something that you can just so easily like discard and like forget. Bailey is Bailey and she'll always be Bailey, but she's not Bailey. You know what I mean? Like, she's lost her Bailey-ness. And I know it's a lot of behind the scenes things about like Chandra Wilson, the actress, saying that she didn't want to play the stereotypical angry black woman character, and it's all, I don't want to get into all of that. I'm just talking about within the show, in universe, Bailey is different, and it sucks because she was such a character. She was like a pillar of this hospital, you know what I mean? She, even though the show starts off with her literally being a resident, like 2 years above Meredith and the group, like, she somehow makes it seem as though she's been an attending for years already, and this is just when the show started. So that just only grows. She becomes more of a mentor, and you learn more about her, and honestly, she's amazing. She's one of the best characters. She's so fierce and sure of herself and competent, and she just like keeps everybody in check, you know? And I love that because it's also undercut with this genuine, like, she cares about people. She never wants to be involved in all the hospital drama, but she is, because she knows everything that's going on with everyone, because she's so perceptive and she can't just let things go. Like, she gets involved because despite this like cold, detached persona that she puts on in the hospital, she does actually care about these people, you know? And it shows whenever one of the five are in danger, because they're always in some sort of danger, Meredith mostly. She cares, you know, she feels it. And that's the thing that I always loved about her, that duality about her character, and it's gone now, but anyway. So this Bailey, where did it all start going wrong? I've had a couple of conversations with people who say that it all started when they gave her OCD. And I kind of understand where they're coming from, because it is like the first sign of weakness that they give her. But to me, I always really like that storyline because it makes sense for her character. Like, as I said, Bailey is competent and she's a good surgeon, and she is like confident in her abilities. But she's not like Christina is exceptional, right? She's an extremely skilled surgeon, but she's always been shown to care more about the surgery than like the person. And like, they peel back the layers and you find out, you know, she knows the patient, and she obviously cares that this person lives, but she doesn't like get invested in the patient's lives and, you know, stuff like that. Whereas Bailey, for her, she always knows the entire story of her patient. She knows their family, she knows their hopes and their dreams and their history, you know? And she gets she's not like Izzy who gets overly emotionally attached, but she does care. It's always a person on the table for her. And she always keeps that in sight. Like, that's why she does what she does, right? And so when somebody ends up dying, not because she did everything she could for them and she couldn't save them, not because she even like made a technical mistake in surgery, and or someone made a technical mistake and the person died because of it. It's not that, it's literally her hands. Like, she was sick, and so despite the fact that she did everything wrong, she killed this person just because like she wasn't clean, she wasn't careful. And that, to Bailey, who is always in control, who is always so sure, who is always so confident, that is like, she now overcorrects. And I can see that happening for Bailey. And it was horrible to watch because it's Bailey and we hate to see her so unsure of herself and so anxious all the time and scared. But I think that that was a good storyline because ultimately, and this is important, ultimately she overcomes this issue. It's something that she has to face. It's terrible for us to watch, but you know, we watch these characters go through terrible things all the time. It's Grey's Anatomy. But at the end of the day, Bailey comes out of it through her own determination. It shows us more about her character. It develops her, and she grows into a new kind of Bailey, you know, and she has a different kind of empathy even for other people when they have to overcome something. She's like, you know, this is not something that you should let pull you back. You know what you need to do. You have a gift and you're either here to do it or go home. You know, this is still Bailey. She just has a new perspective now. Whereas the heart attack, it just, I hate the storyline for several reasons. The most important reason is because it implies that she is unable to do the job that Weber had been doing for years and that we always knew she was going to have. Because it's one thing to give her an obstacle that she has to overcome. We've seen the stress of the job. Weber was an alcoholic and he had horrible marriage and an affair, and you know, he just never had kids, all of this stuff. Like, his personal life was in shambles, but he was a good doctor and he was a great chief. And so now when you give this role to Bailey, having her struggle to balance the work and home life, you know, balancing act, she can't, like, showing her struggling with it makes sense because she is very much active in her personal life, in her son's life, in her marriage. Like, she doesn't want to neglect those. And we've already seen how just being a surgeon in general is already so difficult for them to have lives. That's why they're constantly dating within the hospital, because it's so hard to have a thriving personal life when you're a surgeon, and you want to be a great surgeon the way these people want to be. So I don't really mind showing her getting super stressed. I don't mind the storyline of the heart attack itself, really, because there's also the added stress of Ben has now gone off to become a firefighter and she's worried constantly for his life, because it makes sense, he's old and he's getting into this new career that is extremely dangerous. It makes sense to me. The real problem is not exactly the heart attack. The problem is that she never recovers. You see, like with the OCD, it's something she struggled with for a long time, and then she developed ways to cope, and it made her a stronger person. The heart attack weakens her character constantly, and it's like it's something she can never move past. It's always that she's too stressed, she's so worried about having another heart attack. She takes a sabbatical from her marriage, which, what even does that mean? And why would Bailey do that? You know, like, I if you think about it logically, would she actually just like pause on her marriage and like ask him to move out because she's super stressed? It feels very contrived. And and then on top of it, like her whole personality becomes about that, like her constantly talking about it, her always like she then quits the job. And I'm like, Bailey was basically running this hospital when she was a resident. Why are you trying to convince me that when she finally gets the job, she just can't do it? I don't understand why they made that seem, because it's like, it's fine if you're saying like she's trying so hard to be like Weber, and in her constantly trying to do that, she's failing, and it's like causing her all the stress. It gave her a heart attack. Her marriage is, under strain and all of this. That's fine. Eventually she has to come up with the Bailey way of doing things, because of course she would. Like, it's even so infuriating because at some point she like hands over to Karev for a while she's trying to figure out what to remove from her life in order to like lower her blood pressure or something. Her just stress levels are too high, so she like takes the sabbatical from her marriage, and then she takes some time off from work and gives Karev the job for a while. And then they make it seem as though not even make it seem, they literally say that like Karev has come up with a way to handle the job the way Bailey couldn't, and it's literally just delegating. Like, he just has the residents or the interns or something just like doing things for him, and then he just like glances over it, checks it, and approves. And I'm like, delegating? Are you kidding me? Alex Karev, I love him to death, but he cannot be a better chief than Bailey. You're joking. And so that's the thing that like frustrates me so much about it. It's like, you can have these characters go through terrible and painful things, fine, but you, especially with a character as formidable as Bailey, with a character that we've been knowing from the beginning that she was just gonna be the next chief, to then just like break her down in this way and not let her come back stronger. And now she's just kind of this like always worried about not taking on too much, and always worried about her stress levels, and like, she didn't come out on the other side. And I don't understand why they did that. So it just kind of, for that reason, is like one of the worst things, because she's one of the best characters. And this heart attack is one thing that happened a long time ago, but it has these far-reaching consequences. Like all the other things in this list, it's like it drags on into other elements, and that's why I'm like, it's just like the worst thing you could have done. And lastly, for this video at least, Alex's exit. Now, you can call it whatever you want. Alex leaving for Izzy, Alex ghosting Joe with the leaving letters for everyone, Alex going to be a dad, whatever, however you want to phrase it. I hate this. And it's not as big a deal as some of the other things. I don't feel like this particular thing has as many like far-reaching consequences as the other things on this list, but it's just the simple fact that he's one of the core characters, the original, depending how you want to look at it. He did join after the others, but he's part of the magic, and so I'm like, you cannot disrespect his character this way. He deserved a much better exit. We deserved, as fans for 15 years, we deserved a much better exit for such an important character like this. So these are the things that are a little bit difficult when it's like outside of your control, because the actor wanted to leave. Justin Chambers wanted to leave the show. Nothing you can do about it. You have to write the character off. I understand. It was the same with Kyla Lee, because she also just wanted to move on. Lexi's actress. So what do? Nothing to be done. You have to write the character off, but you then need to give them the respect that they deserve in their exit. Now, I'll talk about the other characters' exits a little bit after, but let me vent for a minute, because I understand the impulse to say that if Alex is going to leave Joe, then he's he would leave her for Izzy. Izzy's the next best option. Because this is something that has a lot of history for us. People loved Izzy, I'm pretty sure. And when they were together, I mean, they were cute, you know? Like, Izzy was this ray of sunshine, this bubble character that everybody liked, and Alex was this dark, brooding, evil spawn, you know? Like, he was rude and whatever. And the two of them together were such an interesting pair because you wouldn't really expect it. And they sort of just, like, brought out interesting things in each other. And he changed so much, and he evolved so much with her. And it was great, and we wanted them together. So I understand being like, we'll give the fans this instead, we'll give him this happy ending. It's the same sort of idea that they have with like Callie and Arizona, as I mentioned, where it's like trying to think of what would this character's happy ending be. And you kind of just go back to the people that they loved the most, I guess. That's Izzy for him. I understand, except that he went through so much of an evolution. And this is the thing that sometimes makes me wonder if the writers of these shows forget, or they assume that because the show is so long, we as fans don't go back and rewatch the earlier seasons as often, or like over and over again as I do. Because some of the things that they write, you'd think it's like they expect us not to remember that there was a whole other storyline that basically contradicts what they're trying to do now. Because we watched him go through this. We watched him be with Izzy and become this, like, a much better guy and just grow up and all this stuff. And when she left, I don't want to like assign blame. I've never really been able to say like any one of them was right or wrong. I may have to go back and watch it again. Don't like attack me or anything if this is like a pretty obvious thing. But the way I remember it is that, you know, she's going through a lot. If we actually think about it from her perspective, she has just survived a really terrible cancer. She almost died. Her best friend died. And I've said my thoughts already on all of that. But, you know, within universe, like, her best friend died, and it's just a lot. And now she's having to deal with the aftermath of that. People are treating you differently. Even Alex, you know, he's fussing over you and whatever. And sometimes you just need to get away, and you just need to breathe and like remember who you are as a person, not as a sick patient, you know. So I've always kind of understood that perspective. But also, she was a terrible wife, and she left him constantly stressing. He didn't even know if she was showing up to her appointments, which was, of course, would be very dangerous for her. She would get sick again. And he had gone through already the traumatic experience of nearly losing somebody that he loves so much, somebody who is so important to him. She died in his arms, you know. And so it's like, it was traumatic for both of them. And so I do understand it breaking them apart. But she was a horrible wife to him in those last few moments that they were together. And so when she comes back and she's like, oh, I'm back now, like, let's just go back to normal, everything's gonna be fine. And he's like, listen, I'm so happy that you're okay. I'm glad that you're healthy and everything is all right. Because I was like panicking, but it's because of her that he knows that he knows that he deserves so much better than the way that she's been treating him. And it was such a like powerful moment for him to be able to say, like, I love you, but I deserve more than this. And you taught me that. And that's like that's a huge character moment, you know. That's like great growth for his character. And so to then have him ghost his wife in the end, like, it's baffling. He would just not do this, especially since this version of Karev, who is with Joe, is light years away from that budding good Alex of like season 6 or whenever that was that she left. Like those early seasons, Karev was just learning to be a good guy. He was just like getting over that hump of like being the evil spawn, you know. He was like moving more into like a grown up, and but he was just at the beginning. This Alex, who's with Joe, is like very mature. He's like he's grown even more than that, and they've been through so much together. And I don't understand why they would then have him not face her, because I have so many issues with the plot line of how he left. But even just on a basic level, even if you say like this is how he's going because he found out spontaneously that she has kids and he's gone to be a dad, and so he just wants to leave without any dragging Joe into it or whatever. Like have him have the conversation, show that growth where it's like this is not the Alex who like avoids things or like just gets angry and fights. Like he faces the situation like an adult, faces his wife, and is like, because even remember like how he got into a fight with his brother when his brother thought he left Izzy, not that Izzy left him, where it's like, oh, you turned out just like that. Like that, it's such a sore spot. Like he just would not. Anyway, moving on from that though, aside from him just ghosting her, I don't like the way they handled the abruptness of it, because I think even without Justin Chambers, there are ways that they could have dragged the story out to really show the impact of him leaving, because the way they do it is just that he's just kind of not in more and more episodes. He doesn't show up, and then it's just like, oh, there's letters, oh, he's gone and he's never coming back. But this is, as I said, one of the core characters. Like he was extremely important, not just to Joe, but to Meredith. And so it's like they should have integrated it more into the storyline, having people like being like, oh, where's Alex? And Joe being like, oh, he's gone out to whatever, he's gone. Like just, he doesn't need to be there in order for Joe to have conversations with Link, for example, about how she's worried about Alex. He's not talking to her as much. She doesn't really know what he's doing. And then she finds out that he has kids, and he's like, I have to go out and see them. And she's worried about, is he going really because of the kids, or is it because of Izzy? She has her own insecurities, you know, like it could have been played out from that perspective. So we know what's going on, and we're like, wait, is he actually gonna leave her? You know, like, because every other character got such a good exit, like except for Meredith, but Meredith didn't even really exit, she came back. But like Christina's exit was like top tier. The way the way they integrated all the stuff with Burke, and it's like, I've always kind of thought about it like when Burke left, it had of course a huge impact on Christina emotionally, but also he also affected her career, because now he left her with this reputation of like, she's not really that good, she just slept with him, and so she got perks from that. Or that's like what Erica Hahn thought, who came in after him. And then he also like didn't give her the recognition for the Harper Avery that he won, even though she absolutely deserved that. And so with his coming back, I've always kind of seen it as like, he left and he took so much with him, and he slowed down her career. He actually interfered with her career and her learning. And now he's back, and he's come with like, he respects her. It's like proof of like finally recognizing the talent that she has, and the skill, and that very unique quality that she has, that he didn't give her the recognition for before. And she kind of gets to say, you know, she doesn't revere him anymore. She doesn't idolize him. She's equal to him. She's better than him, you know, like she she's in a completely different place now. The power dynamics are so different. It's a nice contrast to the way it ended. Like it's like they actually thought about that. What would their dynamic actually be like all of these years later? And you have her going back and forth the whole time with Meredith, and then the actual exit where she actually got to say goodbye, like the whole dance off with Meredith, just like beautiful. And it was honoring that intense ideal relationship that we, the way we all, like, you're my person. That is such an iconic thing, and it's them. And so they honored and they respected that relationship and our love for that relationship, to give them that proper emotional goodbye, even though it's not, like tears and whatever, because that's not them, but it's still emotional and heavy, and you can feel the weight, like she's gonna be gone and it's gonna suck for everyone, and she gets to say goodbye. And I think that it's the same with, like, okay, let's say that they just had Sandra Oh, they had more time with her, she was willing to do that proper goodbye, fine. Lexi's actress, she left very, like, Lexi died abruptly. It wasn't something that was being built up to, and it still had that weight. We still felt it, like Lexi is dead, man. And it was in the reactions of the characters. It was like they utilized that suddenness to be like, oh my god. And then even with the way like Mark dies as well, it's one of these I started working a little bit on the script for the best things that I think they did in Grey's Anatomy, and one of them is Mark's death, because I think it was just like his character needed to die at that point. Even though I love him, I'll explain it. I'll go into further detail in that video, but basically, I think it was a really good decision that they made to kill him, and to tie it into this, it adds even more weight to Lexi's death, because going back to that thing about, like, the character's happy endings, where it's like, okay, if you think Arizona's happy ending is Callie, then, like, they kind of give you that. They keep on putting in these hints for fan service that, like, Arizona and Callie are together wherever they are. And they've done this now with Alex and Izzy, where it's like, they're each other's happy ending, and if they were always going to find each other their way back to each other, kind of thing. Mark and Lexi, it's like they are each other's happy ending, and if she's dying because she had to die, then Mark needs to die as well, because they're never going to end up with anyone else. And it's even more weight to that, where it's like they never got to actually have their relationship, and we wanted it so badly for them, and like it's so sad that it got cut short. And then Mark's death, you have the moment with Jackson. Like, Jackson is super worried. He had this beautiful relationship with Jackson, and now it's like that episode where he gets his strength back and everybody's like, he's better, and he's not. And you get to see that from Jackson's perspective and from Callie's perspective. Callie's in shambles. Like, she is stressed, and again, it's about respecting the relationships. Mark had a great relationship with Jackson, a great relationship with Callie, and of course Sophia. Like, these are the important people in his lives. So when he's leaving, like, you draw it out with these people, from these people's perspective. Even if you don't want to focus on the person who's actually leaving, maybe you don't have a lot of time with them, so you focus on the people that matter. And which is why I'm saying, like, the way Alex leaves, it doesn't have any of that weight. You don't feel any of the characters working through it. Like, there was even a time when Meredith, I think she tries to tell him not to leave at some point during residency, when he gets an offer somewhere else. And I can't remember but exactly what was happening, but she, like, tries to get him not to go, and he's like, I'm not gonna stay, I'm not gonna give up this amazing opportunity just because you don't want to be alone. And I think imagine how beautiful it would be, like, to have that now, where again he's about to leave, but he can't make up his mind. He doesn't want to leave her, because they had an amazing relationship. Again, this is something that I put on the best things I think they did in Grey's Anatomy list, because their relationship just so beautiful, you know, like it's such a strong bond, and it's one that evolves nicely over the show, until they become so important to each other. And so imagine now he's in a different place and he's like, I don't want to leave Meredith. He doesn't, obviously he's married, he doesn't want to leave his wife. He's not really sure what he's gonna go and do out there with Izzy, but you know, his kids, what is he gonna do? And then to have Meredith be like the one who like gives him permission to go, and she's like, I don't want you to leave, but you have to, and I understand. Like that would have just been such a nice, like, I don't know, just, I keep coming back to it. It just feels like respect. Just honor the relationship and the journey that you've taken me on with this character. Because you made me invested in them, and like the way they've done it, it's like you don't even give me, because like with Izzy, you know, it wasn't the best exit, I would say, for her, but the way they did it still made it feel natural. Like despite the fact that it's out of character, the way she was acting and the way she was treating Alex so badly and ghosted everyone and stuff, like it's not her. But as I said, like she's gone through this entire trauma, and sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to get yourself right. And so it's like, and then as much as I understand that, it's not being told from her perspective, it's being told from Alex's and everyone else, where they're like, Izzy, like, where are you? What is happening? Everybody is constantly talking about where is she, what's going on with her, when is she coming back? Nobody knows, but they're always talking about it because she was so important. She was an integral part of the group, and everybody is very invested in her well-being. And so people are not just gonna go about their days not mentioning Izzy, and she's not been there for several episodes, you know. And then we also get to detach from her as well, because they keep talking about her, because we can see them all working through their own feelings about her being gone. We can see Alex kind of moving on. We can see them all like reforming bonds and stuff and taking sides, and we know she's in the wrong here, and so we have our own anger, like, why is she treating Alex this way? And so when she does come back and she's like, well, I'm back now, like, let's just go on with life, and Alex is like, no, go with peace and love, but go. We're with him as well. We're in a place where we can let her go, because we're like, yeah, we're kind of not, you've been horrible and we've moved on, like life has gone on and we don't want to go back. So it's okay that she leaves, even though you may have your feelings about it, you may be upset, you loved Izzy, but they did try at least to get us to that place of accepting that she's leaving. And they don't do that with Alex. They drop the bomb on the character at the same time they drop it on us. And it's like, yeah, he hasn't been around for several episodes, but again, it's like the way they did it with George and Izzy after that whole relationship thing, like just fading a character into the background and hoping we don't notice. It's rude. That's basically what it is, because of course I'm gonna notice, you know. And so I think that's just the same reason that I hate the relationship thing, because of how it ended up being an excuse for why George is not in the show as much until he dies, is the same reason why I dislike this storyline so much for Alex, because it's lazy writing. He may not have been available to shoot a nice long proper episode where you can say goodbye to Alex, or several episodes, but you don't have to. There are ways you can do it, focusing on the other characters and the people who matter, and them just working through their emotions of a main character leaving, and such a beloved one, and somebody that had like such a beautiful character arc throughout the story, and so well done and well executed, and you get to see his growth. Like I said, we've been on this journey with him, and so now you've just like changed directions abruptly. It's like you can't just do that. And because he's so important, even though it's not something that has the kind of like ripple effect consequences that I mentioned for some of the other things, where it affects stuff outside of just that character, this one is mostly just Alex and Joe. But even with Joe, from what I can remember these are the seasons that I haven't watched as often. So, but from what I remember, they don't even dwell on it so much. Like she goes through it, she's upset, she's depressed and stuff, but I don't think they like dwell on it. It doesn't impact her greatly moving forward. And none of the other characters either. And it would, because he's anyway, I can talk about this forever. So the point is just like, because of who he is, because of the weight of his character, like importance, it should have been handled with so much more care, and I don't forgive them for this. So yeah, that's gonna be it for the worst things that I think they have done in Grey's Anatomy so far. Part 1, because Grey's Anatomy has 21 seasons. So believe me when I say that there will be more additions in this series. There's gonna be multiple parts, because everything from season 13 onwards, I'm not a huge fan, and therefore I could watch any episode in those seasons and probably tell you something that I think is the worst thing that they ever did. So there's content aplenty, believe me. But there's also a lot of good stuff, and like I said, I've been working on that script as well to kind of counter the negativity. You know, there has to be balance in life, and it's not a show that has run for 20 seasons because it is trash. It has good elements. So there's also that coming out. So make sure you're subscribed so that you actually can watch that video when it comes out. I'm also super curious, like, whether there is anything on this list that people might think doesn't deserve to be here. Like, maybe this is like one of those things that I hyperfixate on, or like I'm nitpicking, and actually it's not that big of a deal. It's not like the worst thing they've ever done. I saw somewhere like some people like Owen Hunt. Can you believe it? I don't know about those people. Super suspicious to me, but if you do like Owen, please give me a reason why. Explain yourself. And then also, if there are like some things that you think are the worst, as I said, this is not necessarily like top 5 worst things, but if you had to make a top 5 list, like, what would you put on that list? The worst things they ever did. I'd love to read those as well. Maybe there's something that I haven't thought about yet, because I have a list of stuff. I'm wondering if like there's stuff I haven't thought of. Anyway, I can talk about Grey's Anatomy forever. So thanks so much for watching. I had a huge blast just ranting about this, even though I did take a long break in between. But I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.